All right.
Oh, that's a good tip.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Debbie Arbini, and I sit in the Teams engineering product group here with my colleague, and happy to invite Ika, one of our customers. They'll come up a little bit later today to talk to you, but thank you so much for joining our Designing Your Path from Skype to Teams. I'm assuming that all of you are Skype for Business users today. Yes, hopefully. So we know that this is such a critical topic and a hot topic, and we likely could have spent an entire day in a session like this. So instead what we did is we broke this out into 3 core Skype to Teams sessions. This one in particular is called Start Here, because we're getting you started on your Skype to Teams journey so that you're in the right place if you're just getting started. We also know that we're getting a lot of questions around what about the technical paths and the migration and coexistence, and what does that all look like? We have a session dedicated just to that topic coming up tomorrow. I'll give you a flavor of what you'll see tomorrow today. But again, tomorrow there'll be that deep dive. And then on Thursday, we know that this is a big change for your end users, so we want to make sure that you're prepared for your end users to make this transition over to Teams as well. So there's a session coming up on Thursday focused specifically on the end user change management piece. And if you're really curious as to how Microsoft is managing our own transition from Skype to Teams, we have a session on that as well. So today, what we're hoping to do is share a little bit about the journey we've taken internally over the past year. From about a year ago this time, you were all sitting in these seats hearing for the first time about this IC vision and, hey, what is this all about? And yeah, down the road, we're going to streamline onto one client. What does that mean? Right? Fast forward a year, we've done a lot of work. So today we're going to start off by sharing some of those insights over the past years with you. We also want to share our upgrade framework, which is basically our guidance to get you from point A to point B and beyond. So we'll share that with you today. Scott's going to come up in a little bit and share some real-world customer insights. So we've been talking to customers over the past year, understanding what will it take for them to go from Skype to Teams? What are their requirements? What are their blockers? You know, let's capture all of that so that we can build on that and facilitate that transition for all of you. And then, as I mentioned, you'll hear firsthand from one of our customers that are going to come up in just a little bit as well. So what we hope you take out of this session is that we're really ready for you to begin your journey, even if it's running Skype and Teams together. We have the guidance and the assistance and resources to help you get there. And we really want you to think of Teams more than just an apples-to-apples move from Skype for Business. You know, if really all we were doing is taking all of the features from point A and putting them in point B, what's the point, right? It's just a different skin on the front end. So we really want to take it to the next level and really bring your organization into that modern workplace digital transformation environment. So this is just a look back. As I mentioned, probably a year ago, you're all hearing for the first time this IC vision. And Microsoft has been doing a lot over the past year. First, to get Teams ready for you. So from a product innovation standpoint, we've been doing a lot of development, bringing you features and functionality. And from a migration standpoint, making sure you not only have the tools, but the in-client experiences so that you and your users have a good navigation path to get you from Skype to Teams. And at the same time, our team has been working with customers, kind of a help us help you type of experience to get you ready to move to Teams. And along those lines, we've been talking to a lot of customers. We have a lot of learnings, a lot of best practices, a lot of benefits that we've been able to extract from those conversations and bring them into our upgrade guidance. So we have a lot of guidance we've put out there, which is based not only on our customer conversations, but also on our team's years of experiences moving between UC products. So I'm going to do a double click in most of these topics today. I'm going to start with the product development piece. Anyone who attended Lori's Wright's session yesterday, some of these slides might be a little bit of a review. But when we started out thinking of going on this journey from Skype to Teams, as I mentioned, we don't want it to just be an apples-to-apples comparison. We really want to take it to the next level. And we really see Teams as this hub for everything teamwork related, bringing all of these M365 tooling and products under one umbrella, and that being Teams. So again, we see it as more than just a simple transition. We see it as a way to develop teamwork. And over the past year, Teams has actually become the fastest growing app within Microsoft, with over 300,000 companies already using it. Many have over 10,000 active users within the Teams environment. And what we're trying to do is really build out this IC, or intelligent communications vision. So over the past year, we've been working to build all of those core Skype for Business online capabilities into Teams, bringing teams together to make it that complete meeting and calling experience. And to help you make that transition, there's a lot of upgrade tooling and resources available, which I'll show you that in just a little bit. And if anyone's familiar with Fast Track, we've also engaged Fast Track resources to help through that transition from Skype to Teams. And as I mentioned, we see this as more than just that apples-to-apples move. We're taking it to that next level. So these are some additional tools. These weren't available in Skype, but these are some additional things that we're building into Teams. Some of them are available now, some are coming soon. I really want to call your attention to the 4th line down under coming soon, because I've heard this at least 5 times a day for the last 3 days of when can we share without having to escalate to a call? It is coming. I've also heard, it's a little bit farther down on the list, how do we really, from a governance perspective, how do we create some consistency in how our organization creates teams? So we're going to be launching some Teams templates, so you can create teams from templates that we have out there to help streamline that process and make it a consistent experience for your users. All right, so we talked a little bit about what's happening from a product perspective, but what about the in-client and in-service experience? We know that users are going to be on Skype, and you're probably going to have some users on Teams for an extended period of time for many of you. So we wanted to make sure that users are able to talk to each other and that they're really able to see when someone's on Skype and someone's on Teams. So now, some of you may have seen this already, but when you're in a chat, for example, if I'm in Teams, I'll be able to see that someone, it'll give me a notification, it'll give me a coach mark that says, hey, this person is using Skype for Business. And the reverse is true. If I start a chat from Skype for Business with someone in Teams, I'll get to see, hey, this person's using Teams. And it simply lets you know that, hey, maybe not all of the functionality would be there, but you can still get your core messages across. So we've built that functionality into chat, we've built it into calling, and we've built it in when you are in a call and you want to share something from your screen. It will give, ooh, it's jumping up and down. It's excited, it's so excited. Look, it's so excited. See, even they're excited. So yeah, we wanted to make sure that your users have a good experience in still working with people that may be on Skype while other folks have already moved to that Teams-only mode. So again, test it out within your own environment, and you'll be able to see that in-product experience. And then as you start moving, uh-oh, now my clicker stopped working. And my PowerPoint froze. One moment, please. Uh-oh. All right, I'm going to let Scott try to figure that out. I'm just going to keep talking. So one of the things we wanted to make sure of, as you're getting users to move from Skype to Teams, is that you have the flexibility in controlling what applications and to what extent those applications are available to your users, right? Coexistence modes, you've probably heard them as modes, or different environment for your users. So at an organization, thank you, Scott, at an organization level, you will soon see, if you don't see it already, in your admin portal, the ability to control the mode that your user's in. Is it Skype only? Is it a Teams only mode, meaning they've officially moved over? Is it somewhere in between? Again, these modes, you're going to hear it tomorrow about all the different modes that are there today, as well as those that are coming soon. You'll also be able to control this at the end user level. So if you want to not move your whole organization over, maybe it's per user, maybe it's a group of users, you have that flexibility. In addition, we know that people don't read email. So if you send your users an email saying, hey, we're upgrading from Skype to Teams, there's a good chance they may not see it. And then we've all heard that, hey, I didn't know what happened. I logged in today. It tells me I can't log into Skype. So there's also a notification option that you can enable both at the organization and the client level, at the user level, to let users know. So when they open up Skype for Business, there's that purple bar across the top that says, hey, Skype is becoming Teams. It lets them know, so in case they miss the email, they can't come back to you and say, I didn't know this was happening,
So one thing that I just wanted to add in here is, the customers that we've been working with, and I'll touch on this in a little bit, we've actually had customers go into Teams only mode, and then they've been able to roll back. So, don't think of this as like, oh my God, I have to be perfectly ready before I move someone over. You can move them over, you can move them back in about 5 minutes. We actually had one organization, I don't remember the name and I wouldn't want to call them out. Someone actually went and changed the org-wide setting to Teams only mode, and all their users started getting this like, I can't sign into Skype for Business. So we worked with them on the support side and we rolled them all back and everything was cool. So there's a change in behavior, but also keep in mind that it's a very safe space to get back to.
Yep, that's a great call out. All right, and as I mentioned, that was a super high glimpse of that functionality, the tooling, the in-client experience. Tomorrow there's that deep dive session, and 75 minutes just on that topic. So definitely it's BRK3142 if you want more insights into that. So when we think about, so we've talked about how we've been getting Teams ready for you. Now let's change gears and talk about how we're helping you get ready for Teams. And as I mentioned, we've been talking to customers over the past year, and Scott's going to share a lot more insight into what we've learned from those experiences. But we've taken all of those insights and our own experiences to create our upgrade guidance. And we've also had several learnings that have come out of this. And really what we know, right, Teams is so much more than just flipping the switch on the back end. It's so much more than a technical migration. We know that it's a choice. It's a choice that you're making, and it's a choice that your end users are making, right? Because unlike email, where they're probably not going to go find another email tool, there's a lot of other communication collaboration products out there that they can pick from. So we understand that this is a choice you're making, and we want to help you make that choice to come to Teams. We also know this is a big change. It's a change in the way your organization works if you're moving to this big teamwork environment, and it's a big change for your end users, especially those that were well ingrained in Skype for Business. This is a complete shift in the way they communicate and collaborate with people. And we understand this is challenging, right? We've been talking to customers even since we've been here at Ignite over the last 3 days. Not one customer has the exact same deployment scenario, right? Everyone is different. So we know this is a challenge, and we know that we need to build guidance that's going to be flexible and adaptable enough to accommodate all of your different deployment scenarios. We also know that you can't just flip the switch. You can't just be focused on the technical aspect of this. You really need a holistic approach when you're driving change in your organization. So everything from getting your executive sponsors together, working on your technical readiness, working on end user readiness, and really important, if you kind of follow the circle all the way around, ending with an operational strategy. Unlike products in the past, especially anyone here who's still on-prem, right? You deploy it on-prem, come back 3 or 5 years later, push out an update, you're good to go. Right? This is a product that's going to continue to evolve week in and week out. So you really want to be prepared for all of that innovation that's coming. So it's no longer okay just to deploy it and then leave it alone and come back in a couple of years. So we want to make sure that the framework we give you is exactly that holistic approach. So let's take a look at that framework. And you'll see it's not rocket science. And this is available in our guidance, which I'll point you to when we're done here. The first and foremost thing you need to do is get your right stakeholders, right? And this is your sponsors, it's your IT department, it's your adoption and change managers, and everyone in between that's really has a stake in the game to help make this a successful transition. And then together, define what it is you're trying to do. And I call this your vision and your scope, right? So you might have this big, broad vision of, yes, we want to go all in teamwork, where we're all bought into this IC vision. But you know what? The scope at this point in time is just to deploy Teams. Like, we're not going to focus even on upgrade. We just want to get people using Teams right now. We'll coexist it, right? So think about your big vision, and then think about the scope of the project at this time. Define your goals. How are you going to know if you've gotten to that next level? And what is your timeline? So agree, it's kind of your foundation and your blueprint that you're going to work from in the coming weeks and months. And then do your technical and user readiness as parallel work streams. User readiness does not happen after the fact. They happen together. So as you're getting your network ready and testing for quality, you're also getting your users ready and making sure that they're on board to make the transition over to Teams. And from there, run a pilot, right? I don't know anyone in this room that will probably just flip the switch all at once. Maybe you will, right? But you probably run some sort of pilot to make sure that you're validating your technical and user readiness environments. and then at some point in time, you'll start actually upgrading all of your users to Teams. And then, as I mentioned, there's that operational piece. So all of our guidance is built on this foundational framework. And I want you to think of this framework as a bridge, right? We've basically built the bridge to get you from Skype to Teams. How you cross that bridge is up to you, right? So we know that some people may pack everyone in a car and go in the HOV lane, right? You might go in the express lane and say, just throw everyone in the car, we're gonna cross everyone over at once. Other people might say, you know what? We have way too many people, we have to take multiple cars. Some are gonna be in the slow lane, some are gonna pass other people. So we've built 2 sets of guidance for you. Think of Upgrade Basic as piling everyone in the car, taking that HOV speed lane, right? If you're ready, you wanna just get everyone over as quickly as possible, great. 10 quick steps, we're gonna get you there. We're gonna speed track you across that bridge. If you think you wanna take a little more time, you're gonna put everyone in different cars, right? That's Upgrade Pro. So if you have a complex environment, you're in hybrid, you're on-prem, right? That's really the Pro environment because it's gonna take you a little bit longer and a couple of more steps to get there. Now, all of this guidance is linked from aka.ms/Skype to Teams. When you land on this page, it's our foundational page. You'll not only see our guidance, you'll see links to all of our product improvements, blogs, core investments, links to Fast Track. So lots of information is on this main landing page. And from there, you can double click into our guidance. And if you notice, that left navigation is our framework. We've basically taken our framework and put it into a TOC. So that, and if we have time at the end, I can demo that for you, but definitely bookmark Skype to Teams. It's really your foundational place to go for all things guidance, resources. There's downloadable email templates and surveys and things for your end users that you can find there. So what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Scott, and he's going to take you down that other path of what have we talked to customers about? What are we here? What have we heard from those customers? What learnings do we have? What can we glean from that to help you move forward?
Thank you, Debbie. So as Debbie mentioned, she showed the first slide, kind of what we've been doing over the last, 16 months, I think we sat in a room, Sarah, in Boston and whatever, doesn't matter. So I wanted to kind of just go through some of the things that we, from a Teams product engineering, customer-facing organization have gone through. And really, this isn't just about us. This is about all the customers that are involved. So the gents here from ECA that are going to come up and talk, they've invested a lot of time in their, to tackle their journey, but they've also fed that information back to us. So literally, our team has been traveling the globe doing early customer research. We wanted to make sure that we had a good cross-section of customers, not only in size, in scope, in complexity, in verticals, in languages, in time zones, you name it, we did it. One of the guys that's sitting down here in front's put on, I don't know how many miles, maybe a couple 100,000 miles in the last year, flying around to different customers. So really, we wanted to just kind of set the stage for what we have done. A year ago, we announced, as Debbie mentioned, we announced, here's our vision for Teams, Skype for Business is becoming Teams, and we sort of opened up to the world, and we said, look, this is coming, it's not finalized yet, but we want to introduce it to you now so that we can go out and have all these conversations. So I'll meet with people, customers that I meet with, people that I speak to in hallways at this session, they say, why have you guys been talking about this for a year? Can't you get it right? But that's the whole point. We have been talking about it for a year. We didn't kind of keep it, siloed in the, the halls of Redmond where the products are developed. We've really opened this up to as many customers as we could. So we've done workshops. We did 20, 30, 40 workshops where we flew individuals to meet with customers for 1 day, 2 day, 3 days. We did remote briefings, where we would bring people in where they couldn't travel, we would bring them in. We did lots of calls. We conducted last year at Ignite, we conducted customer side meetings, we conducted upgrade planning clinics, very similar to what we're doing this year. And so what we were doing is we were sharing our early upgrade plans and really gathering a lot of end user customer feedback. So the slides that Debbie showed you around what the in-service experience is going to be like for a user moving from Skype for Business to Teams, that's all foundational based on what we've learned over the last year. So that's a lot of a story about what we did. What are the benefits? So the benefits for us from an engineering perspective is it's allowed us to share our plans, share those plans with customers, and to get feedback and really adjust the process overall, right? Not just the in-service experience, some of the back-end processes, some of the timings that you're kind of starting to see now. That's all based on real-world customer experience that we leveraged. Secondly, all of the guidance that Debbie just pointed to, the journeys, the Upgrade Basic, Upgrade Pro, all of the process around building stakeholder coalitions, coming up with plans, that's again all based on early research that we did with customers. So we kind of, a year ago, we threw together sort of what we felt was the template, and we really put it through its paces. We adjusted it as needed with individual customers based on, again, on size and complexity and what was important to them. But really, we kind of collectively as a team took all that knowledge together and fed it into our guidance. So again, this isn't just guidance that was produced in a silo that's not based on reality. It is based on the reality of a lot of customers. I specifically worked on a program over the last 9 to 10 months. My manager tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, we want you to go out and find real customers who are willing to take people, users, and kind of have them use Teams. It was very gray what it looked like at the time because some of the, what we had in the product. So we kind of started at first with where we would just say to people, look, you 100, just use Teams all day, right? Keep Skype open, don't interact with it if you can. Use Teams and give us feedback. Tell us what it is that you like and what you don't like. What's missing, right? And I think one of the quotes was, we want you to go and look under every rock and every tree and every branch and find all these potential corner cases in terms of what's missing. In general, I think we had done a pretty good job kind of scoping what the upgrade was, but there are a few features that we found when we went and we talked to real-world customers. And I love that Debbie called one of them out in terms of what's coming, which was the share from chat feature. So that was a feature that is in the product, coming very soon in the product. It's a very real feature. We've actually rolled it out to some of our early deployment rings. We have customers testing it now. That was a feature that we've got there because of this early work that we did with customers, because of the feedback that we got from customers that said, yeah, Teams is great, but there's this one thing that I really need. And if I can really have that feature, I'll give you 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 users right away. And so we really did kind of impact the product direction. I kind of also talked about the various upgrade modes, and like Debbie mentioned, there will be a session later this week that gets into all the detail, nitty-gritty of what those upgrade modes are, how you can administrate them at the administrator level. Again, we've been testing and validating those with lots and lots of customers. Many of the customers that we work with are in the top 10 worldwide in terms of customers who are running in a Teams-only mode. And really, it allowed us to find these blockers, get them identified to engineering, and really get them addressed before we went to the world and said, okay, now everyone start moving to Skype for, from Skype for Business to Teams. So what are some of the success factors that we found in working with the customers? What have our customers found that made them successful? And I think the number one most important thing that I tell people is avoid the trap of comparing feature by feature, line by line between what you had before and what Teams offers. And Debbie mentioned this before, is that we want to make sure we look at you want to look at your business and how your people work and what do they do and what can Teams help them do, right? Because that's really there's the old mantra, the carrot and the stick, right? Am I going to beat someone with a stick to get them to move to Teams, or can I dangle the carrot and have them want to move to Teams? And for customers that we found that have been most successful, and when Ika comes up here, they can attest to this, the ones that we found that have been most successful are the ones where we had the carrot out. We said, this is why you want to move to Teams. So the users didn't focus on all the things that they didn't do exactly the same or that were a little bit different or maybe weren't there. They focused on, wow, I can actually collaborate with people better. I can find people. I can bring people into a conversation. I can work on my mobile device. I can work on my web client. I can work on my Mac, and it's a great experience. So a lot of these great things about Teams have really helped to accelerate that transition. And really, it's about helping people get stuff done, helping your users get stuff done, make them more productive, have them make more money, have them produce more widgets, whatever it is. Really focus on that aspect of it. One other thing you need to really think about is this is another transformational shift in IT. So 6, 7, 8 years ago, when Microsoft launched a product called Office Communication Server, we were really bridging the gap between what used to be sort of the messaging world and the telephony world. So we went into offices and we sat down and we had the messaging team on this side of the table and we had the telephony team on this side of the table, and we were having them interact with one another. In a lot of cases, they didn't know who each other was. They didn't know how they worked. They operated independently. They did things completely on their own. They were kind of battling to see who was going to own this new service called Office Communication Server in real time. And so we've been going through that shift, and I'm sure you guys have all experienced that. With Teams, it's another transformational shift. So we've kind of gotten past it. So you got a team who owns messaging. They own unified communication, Skype for Business. They might own telephony, or it might still be owned by someone else. But the transformational shift now is we're bringing in SharePoint. So if you've got an established SharePoint infrastructure, if you've got a team that's dedicated to SharePoint, that's dedicated to the management of it, the governance of it, setup and creation of SharePoint, we're now merging those two worlds in together. So anticipate that shift is going to happen. So when you start planning to roll out Teams, bring that group in, bring them in, get them to buy into the value of Teams, and have them be a trusted partner with you along that journey, as opposed to a potential foe who's trying to deflect and decelerate the usage of Teams. We had a couple of customers that literally just stalled on the starting line. They couldn't get Teams out the door because their SharePoint team wanted to spend 3, 4, 5 months talking around governance of SharePoint and creation of sites and templates and things like that. So anticipate that shift. Another thing that we found with customers is when you attach the shift from Skype for Business to Teams, find parts of the business that are undergoing digital transformation initiatives and attach to that, right? So figure out, hey, are we moving offices? Are we kind of, revitalizing our workspaces? Are we revitalizing how people do work in other areas that might be going on outside of the IT avenue? Figure out where those opportunities are and attach to them, kind of get on that train and kind of move down that road. Another thing that we've had is really about making the end user's experience in Teams the best experience possible. So make sure that when you roll Teams out to someone, that you have people that can surround them to help support them, that your IT teams, that your support desk, your help desk, all of your user guidance where people would go to an intranet or whatever to get questions, make sure that all that's ready to go. And that's all part of the framework that Debbie called out earlier. All this stuff is in there. It's just these are, again, real world experiences that we've brought and put in. So one of the big ones is really about building a champions program. And this is as simple as starting with, okay, I'm going to pick the 30 people in my environment that I think are I don't want to call it brightest, but like the most eager, right? Those people in your environment that are eager to learn new things and they're eager to share those new things with other people. Bring them in, put them into a champions program and say, we'll have monthly touch points with you where we'll talk about new features that are coming out. We'll help you. We'll demonstrate to you how to do a Teams pitch. We'll demonstrate to you how to think of the shift from Skype for Business to Teams. How you think about how I used to work in Skype and how I now work in Teams. And I've done this pitch now probably 10 or 15 times to internal champs groups. I know Debbie does it a lot. And what we find is light bulbs start to go off, right? And I've actually had some of the most staunch, like, I don't want this Teams thing. I don't know what it is. It's confusing. I hate it. To by the end of the call, people are asking me, that same person is asking me all kinds of questions. How do I set up my team? How should I structure it? Where should I put channels? How do I chat with this person? Can you remind me again how I add them in history? And then all of a sudden they're like, well, I don't need that contact list that I used to have in Skype for Business. And I don't need all these other things. You kind of get them to buy in. So I think Champs is a really, really powerful way.
And Scott, I'll just add that a few years ago, Microsoft did a study. The product was still Skype, but using it ubiquitously with Teams here. And they asked customers, who are the most influential roles in getting users to switch over or start adopting a new product? Every other product within the Office suite, so you look at Outlook, you look at Word, Excel, et cetera, was IT and executive sponsor. When they asked about Skype, it was IT and champions. Peer champions.
Yeah.
Because it's the only product where you're always going to work with someone else. Right? You can be in a Word doc, and I can be working in Excel. It's just me alone in my Excel document. You're never going to be using Skype or now Teams by yourself. Right? You're always communicating, collaborating with other people. So peer champions, it just makes it that much more critical and that much more beneficial to have a formal champs program. There is a session, I don't know the session ID, we can find it, that's focused on how to build a champs program. There's a specific session at Ignite around that topic specifically.
Yeah. And then just the last thing I wanted to call out is really proactively plan days, events, and activities where you can show people Teams in action and you can demonstrate and walk through with them the difference from what they had to what they have in Skype in Teams. So it allows them to not only see Teams in action, it allows them to see real world use cases. So you can go into your customer and you can say, hey, let's take a business process that you guys do today using Skype for Business and other traditional tools, and let's move that business process into Teams. And let's show people how simple it is and how they can actually get things done. So we've had customers that have planned kind of Excite days. We've traveled to some of those, participated in those, and really the energy in the room is always really cool and infectious to see, where all of a sudden you've got the first 10 people who are maybe not quite familiar, and then there's other people, and then they're showing each other, and then they're off, like 3 or 4 people are off on this side, and they're like, okay, let's go do this, let's go back to work now, and they're already starting to use Teams. So we're really, we were seeing the value of that, and some of our customers that had plan those days, we can see the usage in the back end just like go up like this, like a big hockey stick. And plus, I think it makes it more sticky, right? When you can show people how to actually get things done, and then they know they have other people that are on those teams. One of the things that we do when we demonstrate this that's really powerful is we'll do demos, we'll create a real team, and we'll take someone from the customer's environment who maybe doesn't necessarily know Teams, and we'll make them drive. Right? So we'll make them share their screen, they'll drive Teams, and we'll just narrate in the background and say, okay, go here, do this. Oh, okay, open up your Skype client. Okay, you see that contact that you had to right click and open it? Now just go over to chat and you'll see that person is there. That chat that you had with them is there. And so it really brings a lot of reality to it. So those are kind of some of the things we've done, some of the benefits that we've seen, and then some of the success factors. So what we wanted to do now is we wanted to shift a little bit. And we wanted to bring up one of our customers. And the reason why we asked Marvin and Jacob to come up, they're actually one of the customers we worked with in our early program. They're one of the most successful customers that we've seen from a growth perspective of Teams, from being able to position themselves to move from Skype for Business to Teams. They got some pretty aggressive plans. And so if I think of what some of the benefits are and the success factors, I look to these guys as a customer that I think fall into the category of both. So Marvin and Jacob, you guys want to come up?
Okay, so my name is Marvin Liljegren, and my friend and colleague Jakob Lindgren, we two will tell you a little bit about the insights and the experiences we had when we implemented Teams at our company ICA. ICA, as this picture indicates, is a grocery retailer in Sweden. And just to give you a background, talking about it in numbers, we have 1,300 individual stores spread out through the country. And each store is actually privately owned. It's not a company that owns the stores altogether. Each store is privately owned by the manager, which gives us, that's pretty much the secret sauce in our business model, because it gives a lot of incentive and motivation to the store owner to actually give the customer the best experience they could have. Besides that, we cover the entire Sweden pretty much. We have 5 areas where we do not have a representation today. We have about 50% of the market share, and we have 4.6 million loyalty customers. That might not be an impressive number when you look at it as a single number, but if you consider that Sweden consists of 10 million, that's actually quite impressive. Besides our grocery retailer store, we have a bank, we have an insurance company, and we also have a chain of drugstores, and we have representation in the Baltics as well, the Rimi logo you see in the bottom there. A few years back, and this comes as no surprise to anyone in this room, but a few years back we started to notice how the market was changing a lot quicker than we were. The adoption rate for us to pace along with the market was too slow. And we did not just realize that our market or our customer was changing rapidly, we also identified that we as individuals working at the company were changing just as fast. But the company in its organization and its culture and the tools that we're using wasn't pacing along with the rest of us. So we decided that we wanted to perform a digital transformation at ICA. First of all, we wanted to establish a direct dialogue and a personalized dialogue with our customer, making sure that she got exactly what she needed and desired at that particular moment. But also, at the same time, we wanted to implement a more modern way of working, a more modern approach to be able to be flexible enough to respond to the quicker market pace. So we decided that we wanted an innovative culture. We wanted to speed up the process. We were going to move to new office spaces, and more specifically, and the reason why we're here talking today, we needed new tools to work with. Alongside, when we decided on digital transformation, we also realized that we needed to safeguard the cultural transformation that comes along with it. So when we wanted to explore new ways of working, we also realized that the teams that we were going to be doing this, the pilots or the program that were going to be doing this, they needed to be cross-functional, autonomous, and feel respected enough to speak truth to power when they felt that someone with a higher pay grade was wrong. And in order for us to do that, we realized that the tools that we had at the time didn't give us the superpowers that we needed to be able to reach this status, to reach this culture. So we started out early and discussed how can we convey that culture that how can we project that culture that we want to achieve. I want to give you an example on the work that we did. I represent a team of 200 individuals, divided into 20-odd teams, and we were given the task to not only build the new digital tools that we were going to use, but also to explore these new ways of working. And we were told to, we were lifted up and put into a virtual organization so that we could deliver on this in a more agile way of working. And when you do that, when you lift 200 individuals up out of the normal line organization and put them somewhere else, we wanted to draw our version of our organization. At ICA, you do this. And I'm sure most of you recognize an organizational chart that looks like this. And when we did that, we managed to get everyone into the certain brackets, and then the lines were perfect, and it was perfectly clear what we looked like. But we didn't feel that this conveyed or projected what we wanted to illustrate in terms of culture, in terms of the signals we wanted to send to our participants in the program. So we decided, let's put some time and effort into redrawing the organizational chart. What would it look like? Of course, we start out by rounding the corners, making it a bit more fluffy, making it a bit more pretty, but that still didn't make it for us. At one point, we tried to turn it upside down to see if that made it more democratic or more focused on the teams and the individuals working in the teams. But none of them really captured what we wanted to do still. We were really racking our brains to find out the best way to illustrate this. And then during one serendipitous moment, someone in the room said, but what if we draw the organization from what it looks like the informal structure, the organization that's by the coffee machine and not the one that the bosses wants us to be in certain brackets. And we did that, and we came up with this model, which we're really, really proud of, because it helped us a lot when it came deciding what type of culture we want to have and what kind of tools we need to be working with. We call it the molecule, and to us, it's completely ripped of status markers. No one can tell that someone has a higher pay grade or more power over anyone in this one. Also, it symbolizes autonomous teams, which makes the team members and the individuals in the program feel more confident about their role in the program, rather than feeling that they are just one headcount or a full-time employee in a bracket. But the real reason why I'm showing you this today is because it also helped us realize that in our virtual organization, when we want to be successful in an agile development, we need to have relationship over hierarchy. The ability that in one bubble, all these bubbles, by the way, represent different teams, sizes represents what size of teams they are in. The ability for one team to relate to a different team if they have dependencies is completely up to the communication between the different teams or the different individuals having that discussion. In the old model that you see, the line organization that you see, if you had an issue in one bracket, you had to lift, and you couldn't get help from the other one because their backlog was too full, stacked up. You had to go to a boss who then told them to perform that action. We don't want to do that here. So here, if you're not, the only way we can be successful between these teams is if we have a way of communicating between each other that's democratic, that's peer-to-peer, rather than leveling a question to someone else. We have been operational, the pilot that has been exploring these ways of working, we've been operational now for over 2 years, almost 2 years. We have, of course, had our challenges. We've had challenges with communication with the rest organization. We can change into Agile all we want, but if the rest of them don't follow along or at least know what we're doing, we're going to have problem communicating with them. Also, we had trouble attracting the proper talents, the spearheading talents that we wanted for our program, because ICA as a company wasn't. I mean, we're in competition with Spotify or Candy Crush King or companies like these that have a far greater profile when it comes to employer branding and IT development. But the one challenge I would like to talk to you about was the tools that we were given traditionally. The IT department provided us with this, but we were asked, or actually demanded, to deliver and develop for this one. The discrepancy between what we had to work with and what we were supposed to be developing for was immense, of course. At the same time, today, everyone in Sweden have one of the highest adoption rate on smartphones early on. We have like 99% today, and we had 75% like 2 years after the iPhone was released. But anyway, today, when we, in our society in Sweden, everyone is walking around with more powerful tools and applications in their pocket, privately owned, than what they have at the company. So, and they have smart features like AI, although Siri might not be the best example of that, but you understand what I'm getting at anyway. Not only that, we're also proficient publishers. We're telling the world what our kids are doing, how cute they are, what our pets are doing, and of course, what we had for lunch. And all this time, and if you're looking at this palette of aspects that's happening right now in society today, we have all these powerful things at our fingertip all the time. But we're still working with this guy in the backdrop there. At least that was the case historically at ICA, which Jacob will talk about a little bit more in a couple of minutes. I just want to mention one thing before I leave the clicker over to him. And that is, at the same time, globally, big companies are now deciding to invest and to put the same time and effort into the inward-facing tools and application as they do towards their customer. And they call it the consumer-grade level. Consumer-grade level on all their internal tools and application. To me, that translates into our giving the same love and affection to the intranet as you would the customer-facing website that we have at ICA, or apps for that matter. Fair enough, proportionally, because it's a slightly different business case in both of them. But that gave us a signal and gave us an example to show our management that we needed to do something about this at ICA. And what we did, Jacob will now tell you more about. Yeah.
All right, so I'm the IT guy who handed Marvin all the old tools. Sorry. And obviously,
Oops. Yeah.
and didn't get us very popular either, as you can see in the slide. At ICA, we've had Skype for Business for a long time. We still saw that most of our users were still using email as their only digital communication tool, and that was something that we wanted to change. So we had two options. We could either relaunch Skype, or we could launch Teams. When Teams was announced, I felt straight away that this is something modern and actually something that the users want. So we went for Teams, and we also decided that we're not going to roll it out the regular way that we normally do, that we're going to focus more on change management and communication this time. So, but we start off with the basics, making sure that Teams work great in our network. We used to call quality dashboard in the Teams admin site just to get everything fixed and up and running. Then we talked to management in different part of our organization, making sure they knew our goals with this, and also bringing them on board at an early stage. We also pinpointed all our shadow IT users, and we gathered all our champions and digital influencers to make them also on board at an early stage, making them feel included. And then we're just starting spreading the word. So we held open auditorium sessions that anyone can join. They were also held as Teams meetings, so if you weren't in the room, you could always join in the auditorium or in the Teams meeting and ask questions there. We also recorded these meetings, so if you weren't able to join at all, you can always watch the recording later. After that, we started narrowing down, doing smaller group sessions. We always end these group sessions with a no email challenge, challenging these groups to not use email for 2 weeks within the group. And it turned out to be really successful for us. I also had my digital influencers, like Marvin, who I know have a saying in our executive groups, making sure that the word is spread from the top to the bottom in the organization. At this point, our users pretty much knew the basics, so we need to keep driving the user engagement. So we used Yammer. We had a Q&A that was first supported by the IT department, but is now turning out to be more and more user-driven. Support organization is obviously very important to bring along with you. We also made a digital first line, making sure that the users had an easy way finding answers to the frequently asked questions. And sometimes our users want to meet someone face-to-face, so our on-site IT support also held lunch events in our cafeteria, where users could just stop by and ask a quick question before going to lunch. So this is pretty much where we are right now. We have over 50% in user adoption, and we haven't even deployed the desktop application yet. And we haven't forced anyone either, so the users can still use Skype if they want to, or Slack for that matter. But we've seen that they are choosing Teams. And because our users are getting more and more comfortable with Teams, they are driving us to get over to Teams-only mode. So we already have a few users and groups in Teams-only mode, and we'll have the whole organization before the end of this year.
That's really impressive. I just want to end by telling you a little bit about the pilot program that I talked about earlier and what the specifics regarding us. This is a picture of us during one of our big room sessions that we have once every quarter. We assemble everyone and plan the next 3 months. When we started out roughly 2 years ago, we wanted to find the best tool available for us to communicate within the group, within that program. And at the time, we only had Skype and Outlook. And we didn't feel that they were good enough for us. So we then had a few teams that had already started with shadow IT solutions, and mainly that was Slack. And these individuals and these teams, they were really die-hard promoters for us to make that an approved solution for the entire program. And so we started that process and to get that approved from the IT department. It took us a while, roughly 6 months, until we got it approved. But once we did, it was only another 2 months until we were going to launch the Teams pilot. And so we've been operational with Teams roughly 6 months now, something like that. And those four individuals and their teams that in the beginning were really promoting Slack are now the same persons are now promoting a kill order for Slack. And if they could, they would probably stop using Outlook as well. So we've seen during 6 months, with no forced transformation from one tool to the other, or to Teams, we've seen that they themselves, from just the user experience, have chosen to continue in Teams rather than in Slack, which was the case for us. Well, at least everyone but this guy. There's still one guy that's really die-hard on it, staying on Slack, but eventually he will come around to it, I'm sure. But what we have seen, though, which is really interesting, is that our ability to operate in this molecule that I showed you earlier has now been a lot more successful because we've had the right tools and applications when we're doing this. And I would say that Teams is the sole reason why we're being able to deliver on this in a more democratic and emotionally more easy way to communicate between the teams and between individuals. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure and a true honor to share our experiences. I'm going to continue with yours, though.
All right, so let me just breeze past their slides. All right, so what I want to do is just take a moment and just kind of recap what we wanted to make sure we covered today. Again, this is your Start Here session, right, as most of you are just starting on your journey, and wanted to make sure that you understood all of the work that we've been doing over the past year, and taking a lot of customers like Ika along that ride with us to make sure that the product is really ready for you as we work to help you get ready for this transition. And that we have lots of tools and guidance out there. Oh, yep, sorry, didn't go into presentation mode.
Keep talking.
Have lots of tools and guidance out there to help get you started on your journey. We do still have those other sessions, so there's the deep technical migration tomorrow. There's one that is just focused on user readiness that's coming up on Thursday. So those are those 3142 and 2190 that you see there on your screen. There's a link to our upgrade site, our upgrade success kit, which has templates and surveys and things like that to help talk to your users about this transition. We are kicking off in the next couple of weeks. This is brand new. I think this is probably the first time we're talking about it at Ignite. Some live online training. This will be for your end users, for your IT pros, so they can join, talk to one of us, hear firsthand, to help them get started, either get started with Teams or get started on their transition. And at this point, what we want to do is really open it up for questions. We still have about 15 minutes or so. We wanted to make sure we know that people have had a lot of questions. So if you do have a question, please come up to the mic. We'll all be up here, so a question for me, Scott, or the folks from ICA. Oh, we have our first taker.
Sure. So thank you for the session. So the question is just as you have built in transitional helps with regard to Skype for Business Online and Teams, are you doing something similar for Skype for Business Server for those who are still on premise to create some level of interoperability and enabling them to transition over time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take that. So there's some modes that they're going to talk about in the 3142 session, and they'll talk about how those modes work between if you're an on-premises customer and moving to Teams. It's essentially going to work the same. There's a few little nuances that you need to be aware of, but absolutely there will be a process to move on-premises customers in Link 2013, Skype for Business 2015, and eventually Skype for Business Server 2019 to be able to move and migrate to Teams as well. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, hi.
Yes. Hi.
When you guys were talking about moving your customers over, one of the things that kind of ran through my head was wondering about how the communication mode. And by that I mean, email is a fairly formal mode of communication, phone fairly formal. I am in chat, usually very informal, but with Teams, where do you guys see that fleshing itself out as far as both from a compliance standpoint and from a formality standpoint, where your customers are kind of picking up the model to use? That makes sense.
You guys have some thoughts based on because these guys, as they mentioned,
Right.
went through kind of a no email challenge, so.
Right. Well, do you want to go?
Well, I mean, when it comes to like informal, I think that we're seeing that people want more informal messaging and in general. So I think that the formal part will just like go away probably with generations more and more, I think. That's, yeah.
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 Yeah, and one of the other day we were talking a little about, because we also hear kind of the which tool when, like where do I start a conference, do I start a chat, and do I start it in email, Yammer, or Teams, like where do I go? Because now Microsoft has many tools that do very similar things. And at a high level, the way I think about it is, Teams is really, it's here, but it's like that informal, it's collaborative, it's when you know the person you're talking to or the group of people you're talking to. Yammer is kind of that big announcement one-to-many. Like you're using it for FAQs, it's the way to kind of generate that. Email is still that ubiquitous. I do see that as kind of I see it kind of the point in time, right? Okay, I need to get this broadcast out to the company or a targeted message in a really formal, professional way. And one of the things that you can do if you start an email and then say, oh, you know what, this is getting out of control, we want to bring it into Teams, it's now part of a project. As you probably know, you can then bring that email conversation into a channel within Teams and then continue it from there. So we're allowing kind of that cross promotion as well, based on where you need to take that conversation. Yeah.
Go over here.
Oh.
Have you announced the formal end of support or deprecation for Skype for Business?
No. Will we?
A while.
I'm sure at some point we have to turn the lights off, but I think it's going to be dependent on the size of the customer, the complexity. I tell customers all that my standard answer when people ask me is, I want to do everything in my power to get you to want to be on Teams and to get you to want to get off Skype for Business. So I mean, at some point, will we announce an end of life? Probably, but nothing official. Not like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you come over here?
Hi, thanks for
Hi.
the session. So my question is about federation. We have federation in Skype for Business. How does it look like in Microsoft Teams?
I'll take it. So, so there's federation that you have today in Teams. It depends on what your Skype for Business underlying infrastructure is. So if you're on premises today with Teams, it's a little bit different than if you're online with Teams. So there's still kind of this thought that we look at, even when you're a Teams user, you still have kind of a Skype for Business home that could be online or on-prem. So there's a bit of a nuance, but essentially today what we have is in Teams, if you want to send a message to someone in another organization, you should be able to do that today. That message will look like what we call an interop message. So it has a bit of reduced functionality in terms of you can do chat, you can do calling, and you can do video. You don't have all the other advanced chat capabilities within Teams. Eventually, we will have pure Teams to Teams federation, so you will be able to federate with people and it will look just like they're internal into your organization.
Is there any timeline for this?
I don't know. Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. So BJ is going to be talking in 3142. They're going to talk about the federation capabilities in more detail, that one.
Thank you.
Just noticed something, and thanks for the great session today. Very helpful, very useful. I noticed on Outlook now the meeting used to say Skype meeting. Now it's Teams meeting. Is that an automatic thing? It happened for me and our folks about 2 months ago, that the Skype for meeting icon on Outlook went away, and now it's replaced with Teams.
So, so when you get Teams for the first time, you should actually have both plugins. You would still have the Skype plugin, you would still have the Teams plugin, and basically that's because you're capable of creating meetings in both systems. When you move into a mode, which they'll get into in more detail tomorrow, but when you get into a mode that we call Teams only mode, we actually look and say, hey, this person's in Teams only mode. We'll actually remove automatically from your installation, we'll remove that Skype plugin. And so only give you the Teams plugin so that when you go and create a meeting, now you're not confused. You go, oh, Teams meeting, boom, done.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a quick observation, I view Teams after several sessions, and we use it for certain applications, kind of SharePoint on speed, that it's easier for user adoption, user customization than SharePoint. SharePoint takes a lot of effort to create file libraries, pages, all those things, but with Teams, I'm coming to the enlightenment where I was going to create SharePoint sites for certain departments. I'm like, I think these should be Teams sites, and they'll be up and going very quickly. Is that how you all feel as well?
Yeah.
Yep.
I can add that we tried we tried both first Outlook groups, and then we tried team sites, but it didn't really work for our users. They wanted everything in one place, so that's why we went with Teams, because yeah, it was the easiest.
Great. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Federated partner, key business partner will probably be Skype longer than us. You know, as we transition to Teams,
Yep.
you know, how do we make sure that's stable, that all those working things that we rely on?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of different aspects. One, from a chat perspective, chat and calling between Skype and Teams, where you've got federated partners, that experience should work. And again, they'll go into a lot more details in that session later today. There are a few nuanced areas that might not work perfectly today, but they're gonna eventually fully work. From a meetings perspective, if you've got a partner who's gonna be on Skype for 2 years, you're still gonna have the Skype client here. It's just kinda got like a window over top of it. Skype meetings, I do this all the time. So I've been in Teams only mode now for 3 or 4 months within Microsoft. I get invites from, frankly, people internal to Microsoft that are still using Skype because we haven't converted them yet. But we've got federated partners that still have Skype for Business. They send me a meeting, I join it, and it's good. So yeah, I think there's, you know, the goal is that we'll be able to work seamlessly as we go, where you can move to Teams more aggressively, you know, and other people surrounding you are still in Skype, so we'll have that complete experience.
What kind of support calls do you receive from your user base?
Are you talking to the ICA guys? Yeah.
Good question. What do we get? I don't really. I mean, it's always.
How do I create a group?
Yeah. Well, we have a FAQ on that, so it's
right.
yeah, it's fine. But it's more or less. So the support questions that we get is a lot about what's happening in Teams. So it's more on like users often focus on Skype to Teams functionality, like that we talked before. So we get a lot about when that feature is coming, and when it comes to trouble, it's always meetings. Someone tried to establish a meeting from, you know, with a bad network or something like that, and it doesn't work.
You told me a story just recently how you mentioned the Yammer channels that we have for Q&As and tips and tricks on how to operate with teams, and how you initially had to provide with answers to the questions that arose in that channel. But what happened, and this is again another example of how the culture is evolving in terms of communications, later on, it was actually other users that were helping the user that had a question. So gradually, you were easing off on this IT support team, and users were helping them each other instead, which is really cool in my mind.
And I'd echo that internally at Microsoft. Debbie and I are both a member. Is this where you're going?
Yep, go ahead.
We're both a member of a champions community team. And I'll see questions in all the time, and I don't get a chance to respond, and all of a sudden you'll see the response. It's like, boom, that's a great answer, right? That's someone else who was not a champion at the beginning that's now part of that community, same thing. They're starting to answer those questions. And I think it's more about usability and like, oh, how would I do this thing? Like, how should I create my team, or how should I bring someone in? Less about the bits and bobs of the client and, oh, I can't sign in, I can't sign out. That stuff is working. It's just more about the usability from what I see.
I would echo that and say that, so as Scott mentioned, we're both part of a champions program internally at Microsoft. We have our own champions to go out and talk to others. And the question I get all the time is, okay, here's my project or here's my team. How do I make this work in Teams, right? And we've heard that a lot from customers. Well, how do I organize teams and channels, and what do I put at the files across the top? And so it's really sitting down with those groups and understanding what they're trying to achieve, and then helping them map out the right structure, because they want to use it, they just don't know how to optimize it. So I would say that's kind of the direction that I see a lot of users going. Yeah.
Middle?
Really enjoying the Teams and Azure Active Directory full court press from Microsoft team this week. So thanks guys very much for putting that together. One question that I have, we've got a SharePoint on-prem instance that is the bane of my existence. Management and pointy heads at the top refuse to move away from on-prem. We've had a lot of success with Office 365 groups and SharePoint team sites, the individual teams, and it's going to give us a good bridge to adoption of Teams. But my question to you is that, since this is the first session that I've been in where we've put SharePoint and Teams in the same sentence, what's your priority in that scenario? Would we go and remediate the organizational Nokia problem of on-prem SharePoint? Or do we pretend that it doesn't exist and hope that it dies in darkness?
Pretend that it doesn't exist and hope that it dies in darkness. And you can, within Teams, you can pin a tab for anything. So as long as that SharePoint on-premises instance has a web page that you can point people to and say, hey, this is archived, this is old school, this is whatever you want to call it. If you're lost for that thing, go here. You can expose it, you can make it visible to them, but then say, hey, if you want to share docs, go here. I mean, we've done that with our team. We had it wasn't on-prem instance, but we had, before our group of about 30 really started to use Teams a year and a half ago, we had a full-blown SharePoint site that still exists today, but it's mostly died out. You know, a few old schoolers still post stuff in there and use it as a repository, but it's essentially pinned to our new Teams instance, and it's just there more for a reference.
So as a follow-up question, if I make these sites and libraries all read-only, am I going to disrupt any of the challenge? Or am I going to make it harder for myself?
You mean your old school stuff if you mark it read-only? No, I don't think so. I think you'll help yourself out. I mean, within Teams, I think we announced this week the capability of archiving a team. So you can actually go and you can archive a team, and what it does is it basically prevents people from posting into that team anymore, and essentially marks the SharePoint online site in the background as read-only. So we're doing that already as part of Teams. So yeah, I would see no instance in marking that read-only for sure. I think you'd help yourself.
Awesome, thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Can I ask the guys, did you use Skype for Business when it was Skype for Business with Enterprise Voice, or was it just a chat and collaboration?
No, we didn't have Enterprise Voice. Yeah.
Okay, so my follow-up question then is, we have moved in the last 4 years or so to a on-premise full Enterprise Voice Skype for Business environment, so we don't have a traditional phone system. And when we did that, our users were very much like, I've been using a phone since I was 2 years old. I know how to pick up a phone and make a phone call. Why are you changing it? So we managed to drive a big change in the business, and people love Skype for Business now. When you're in that kind of scenario, which is not the same as just using it for a bit of IM and maybe an internal call, I feel like that's going to be a much harder challenge to get them to move to something new again, because they've got that muscle memory now. They kind of just, for the last couple of years, they get it. They do multi-party calling, which they love. Now we're changing the whole thing, and that feels like much more of a challenge than maybe what you guys have been outlining today. I'm not saying we're not going to do it. I mean, we haven't got much time, I'm not saying we're not going to do it, and I love Teams, but I think that's a different aspect. And I expect a lot of people in the room probably have the same thing, I would guess.
Well, I can just vouch for the experience from being a user where we had one tool to start with, Outlook, and that was it. And then we added Slack, and eventually once we had that, as I mentioned earlier, had that approved, and we felt that we could do it openly, then we had Teams. And the cadence for this was like within 6 months each time we chose something new. And there was absolutely no hesitation in, once we started with Teams, it just did it itself. The user interface was so much easier to work with than Outlook, of course, and the way we correspond. The question earlier about formal, informal communication, I think Jacob's answer was brilliant. We all want to be informal in our communication. We don't want to be formal. And so a tool like Teams is really helping out.
Sure, and I agree. I think there was a throwaway comment earlier about don't worry about what you don't have in.
Yeah.
You don't have your contact list. We've driven that as a key bit of function. You have a contact list now. You don't have to look at a piece of paper and find it. No, now it's not there, and it's almost death by 1,000 cuts. Okay, you could probably get away with that, but what about the other thing you don't have? And you can't type a phone number, I don't think, in the search bar and just hit enter. You've got to type call / and
yeah.
It's that kind of thing that that muscle memory that people have. I think it shouldn't be underestimated.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think when you're in a space where you're more entrenched in even if whether it's an on-prem or an online instance of Skype for Business, that journey is going to be longer. It's going to be harder. It's going to be more challenging. But again, I go back to the slide that you showed that said, here's what we've just released. And here's another list of 30 things that are coming. So yes, I have gotten people used to moving from the old Nokia phone to something new that's a desk phone and Skype for Business. But now let's take them to that next step. Let's get them to even more. I mean, my personal experience, and again, this is just my personal experience, I don't hardly ever call anyone by phone number anymore. And most of my phone conversations with people are not through the public switch network. It's all in Teams, right? Now, again, that's the way that we work within Microsoft. We're on meetings. If I need to talk to Christian, I'll ping him and say, hey, are you available? I'll hit the call button. So I still call people, I still talk to them, but it's in a completely radically different way. And I get it. Like, you've just gone one step and you got people used to that. It will take some steps to get them to that next thing. But again, I think the carrot and the stick, you show them the carrot and it'll come.
Right, but I also think it taps into what they do on a personal level, because I think everyone who has their own personal cell phone, most people don't dial the number anymore. You find your contact and you call them, right? So I think it's starting to tap into what they know how to do on their day-to-day personal
and they do that in Skype now. I don't think they worry too much about
Yeah.
the number, but unless they're talking to external people, I get it. So I do get what you're saying. I think.
It's fair feedback.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, exactly. And to Sarah's point, that's why we're giving you time. There's when the guy asks the question, are we end-of-lifing this? Nothing's been announced. Sorry, we need to wrap up. If you guys want more questions, come up. We'll see you up here, but I think we need to unmic and maybe get out of the room for the other speakers that are coming.
So thanks everyone for joining. For those that are stuck with us, and make sure you fill out the feedback form. Let us know what you thought, and hope to see you at a follow-up session.